The morning sun had barely cleared the peaks of Kowloon when the first signs of trouble appeared at Golden Harvest Studios. Inside the cavernous soundstage where Enter the Dragon was being filmed, the air carried a tension that had nothing to do with the fictional conflict being captured on camera. Something was building between two men whose on-screen rivalry was supposed to be purely theatrical, and everyone present could feel the storm approaching. The production had been grueling from the start. Bruce Lee had poured everything into this film, understanding that it represented his best chance to achieve the global recognition that had eluded him despite his Hong Kong successes. Warner Brothers had invested significant resources, the first major Hollywood studio to bet on a martial arts film with an Asian lead. The pressure was immense, the stakes astronomical, and tempers had been fraying for weeks. At the center of the brewing conflict stood Yang Zi, known to audiences as Bolo, the terrifying villain whose muscular physique and menacing presence had already generated considerable buzz among those who had seen early footage. At 200 pounds of densely packed muscle, he was physically imposing in a way that most actors could never achieve. His bodybuilding titles were legitimate, his martial arts training was genuine, and his ego, carefully managed during the early weeks of production, had been growing with each passing day. The problem had started subtly, with small comments and minor complaints that the production team had initially dismissed as normal friction. Bolo felt that his character was not being given enough screen time. He believed that his fighting abilities were being deliberately minimized to make Bruce look better. He had started suggesting changes to choreography that would showcase his own techniques more prominently, changes that Bruce had politely but firmly rejected. But this morning, everything came to a head. The scene they were preparing to film was crucial to the narrative. Bolo's character would demonstrate his lethal skills by defeating several fighters in succession, establishing him as the most dangerous of the villain's henchmen. It was designed to make the audience fear him, to build anticipation for his eventual confrontation with Bruce's character. The choreography had been carefully crafted to showcase Bolo's genuine abilities while maintaining the story's internal logic. Bolo had other ideas. He had arrived on set with a proposal that he presented to the director, Robert Klaus, while Bruce was still in makeup. The proposal was simple. He wanted the film to include a scene where his character defeated Bruce's character in combat. Not the final confrontation, which Bruce would obviously win, but an earlier encounter that would establish Bolo as a genuine threat, someone who had actually beaten the hero before their climactic rematch. Klaus had listened with growing discomfort, recognizing immediately that this request was impossible. The entire structure of the film depended on Bruce's character being the supreme martial artist, the one fighter capable of defeating all opponents. Having him lose to Bolo, even temporarily, would undermine the narrative foundation they had carefully constructed. "I understand your perspective," Klaus had said diplomatically, "but this isn't something I can approve without discussing it with Bruce and the producers. The script has been locked for weeks." "Then unlock it," Be on the Lookout had replied, his voice carrying an edge that made several nearby crew members exchange nervous glances. "I am not asking for much. One scene. One moment where the audience sees that my character is capable of defeating theirs. Without that, I am just another obstacle for him to overcome. I am furniture. I am nothing." The conversation had ended inconclusively, with Klaus promising to raise the matter with the appropriate parties. But word had spread through the set with the speed that only film industry gossip can achieve, and by the time Bruce emerged from makeup, everyone knew what was coming. Bruce found Bolo waiting for him near the center of the fighting area, his massive arms crossed over his chest, his expression set in lines of determined confrontation. The crew members who had been preparing equipment suddenly found reasons to be elsewhere, clearing the space around the two men with the instinctive caution of people who recognize approaching danger. "Bolo," Bruce said, his voice carrying its usual calm, "I understand you have concerns about your character's portrayal." "Concerns?" Bolo's laugh was short and humorless. "That is a polite word for what I have. I have been in this industry for years. I have won titles that most people cannot even dream of competing for. And in this film, I am being treated as a stepping stone, a body for you to defeat so that audiences can applaud your superiority. Your character is the primary antagonist's most dangerous enforcer. You have more screen time than any other villain except Han himself. The choreography showcases your genuine abilities. I am not sure what more you are expecting. I am expecting respect. Bolo's voice rose slightly, drawing the attention of crew members who had been trying to pretend they were not listening. I am expecting to be treated as an equal, not as a prop. I am expecting that my years of training and competition will be acknowledged, not hidden behind camera angles designed to make you look faster than you are. The accusation hung in the air like poison gas. Bruce's expression did not change, but something shifted in his eyes, a quality that those who knew him recognized as the first sign of genuine engagement. He had been patient with Bolo's complaints for weeks, absorbing the criticism with the equanimity that characterized his professional relationships. But this was different. This was a direct challenge to his abilities, delivered in front of the entire crew. You believe the camera angles are making me look faster than I am, Bruce said quietly. That is your position. I know what I see during filming. I know what I feel when we rehearse together. You are quick, I will not deny that. But you are not as quick as the footage suggests. The editors are helping you. The cinematographer is helping you. Everyone is helping you because you are the star and I am just the villain who exists to lose. Several crew members had stopped even pretending to work. The camera operators stood frozen at their stations. The lighting technicians watched from their elevated positions with expressions of horrified fascination. Everyone understood that they were witnessing something unprecedented, a direct confrontation between the film's star and its primary physical antagonist. Bruce was silent for a long moment, his gaze fixed on Bolo with an intensity that seemed to make the larger man's confidence waver slightly. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft, almost gentle, which somehow made it more unsettling than any shout could have been. You want to be treated as an equal. You want the world to see that you are not just an obstacle for me to overcome. He paused. And you want a scene where your character defeats mine on camera. Yes.
Bolo's chin lifted defiantly.
That is exactly what I want. Then let us settle this now. Not with words. Not with negotiations. Not with appeals to directors or producers. Bruce took a step closer, and despite being significantly smaller than Bolo, he somehow seemed to fill more space. You and I, right here in front of everyone.
No choreography. No predetermined outcome.
We will see who defeats whom, and that will determine what happens on camera. The silence that fell over the soundstage was absolute. It was the kind of silence that occurs when reality shifts, when the normal rules of professional behavior suddenly no longer apply. Bolo stared at Bruce, his expression cycling through surprise, uncertainty, and finally something that looked like eager acceptance. You are serious. I am always serious about my art. You have questioned my abilities in front of my crew, my collaborators, the people who have trusted me to deliver a film worthy of their efforts. I cannot let that challenge stand unanswered. Bruce's voice remained calm, but there was steel beneath the surface now, an edge that had not been present before. If you defeat me, I will personally advocate for the scene you want. I will tell the director and the producers that you have earned it, that the film will be better for showing your character's dominance. But if I defeat you, this conversation ends. You will perform the choreography as designed, without complaint, for the remainder of the production. Bolo's massive chest expanded as he drew a deep breath. He had not expected this. He had anticipated arguments, negotiations, perhaps some grudging compromise that would give him part of what he wanted. Instead, he was being offered exactly what he had asked for, but in a form that carried real risk. He looked at Bruce Lee, measuring the smaller man with the experienced eye of someone who had spent years competing against opponents of all sizes. Bruce weighed perhaps 140 pounds. Bolo weighed 200. The physical disparity was enormous, the kind of size difference that would matter in any genuine confrontation. Bolo had won bodybuilding titles. He had trained in martial arts for years. He had never lost a physical confrontation to anyone close to Bruce's size. Agreed, he said finally.
No choreography. No predetermined outcome.
We will see who is really superior. They faced each other in the center of the soundstage, the crew forming a loose circle around them, witnesses to something that was definitely not in anyone's contract. Robert Klaus had emerged from his director's chair and was watching with an expression that mixed horror with fascination. The cinematographer was quietly signaling his camera operators to keep rolling, recognizing that whatever happened next would be historically significant even if it could never be used in the final film. Bruce assumed a relaxed stance, his hands held loosely at his sides, his weight evenly distributed. There was no tension in his body, no visible preparation for combat. He looked like a man waiting for a bus, not someone about to engage in an unscripted fight with an opponent who outweighed him by 60 pounds. Bolo adopted a more traditional fighting posture, his massive fists raised, his feet planted in a stable base. His muscles bulged with barely contained energy, every fiber of his carefully developed physique ready to explode into action. He had the advantage in size, in strength, in reach. All he needed to do was land one solid shot, and this contest would be over. He attacked. The movement was fast for a man of his size, a powerful combination of strikes designed to overwhelm through sheer force. His fists cut through the air with genuine intent, targeting Bruce's head and body with techniques that had been refined through years of competitive training. None of them landed. Bruce flowed around the attacks like water around stones, his body moving with a fluidity that seemed to belong to a different category of motion than normal human movement. He did not block. He did not retreat. He simply was not where Bolo's strikes arrived, existing always in the spaces between the larger man's techniques, untouchable despite being well within range. Bolo pressed harder, his combinations becoming more complex, more aggressive. He threw kicks that should have been impossible for a man of his bulk, demonstrating flexibility that surprised even those who knew his training background. He varied his timing, his angles, his targets. He did everything that years of martial arts experience had taught him, and still nothing landed. The crew watched in stunned silence, barely breathing, witnessing something that seemed to violate the laws of physics. Bruce Lee was not just avoiding Bolo's attacks. He was doing so with such ease, such casual precision, that the larger man's genuine efforts appeared almost clumsy by comparison. Then, in a moment so fast that most observers would only understand it in retrospect, Bruce moved. His hand shot forward, not striking but stopping, his fingertips coming to rest against Bolo's throat with the gentlest of pressure. It was not a blow. It was a statement, a demonstration of the fact that Bruce could have ended this exchange at any moment of his choosing, that the entire time Bolo had been attacking, he had been permitted to attack, allowed to exhaust himself against an opponent who was operating on an entirely different level.
Bolo froze.
The fingers against his throat exerted almost no pressure, but they communicated something that required no words. They told him that his windpipe was exposed, that his life was theoretically in Bruce's hands, that every assumption he had made about this encounter had been catastrophically wrong. The silence on the set was absolute. 6 seconds. That was how long Bruce held the position, his fingers resting against Bolo's throat, his eyes locked with the larger man's. 6 seconds during which everyone present understood that they had witnessed something extraordinary, something that transcended normal categories of athletic competition. Then Bruce stepped back, lowering his hand, his expression returning to its usual calm. "The scene will remain as written," he said quietly. "Your character will be defeated by mine in our final confrontation. This is not because the production wants to diminish you. It is because that is what would actually happen. The film should reflect reality, not fantasy. If the story moves you, do not forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. These are the moments that reveal what lies beneath the surface of legends, the truth behind the mythology." Bolo stood motionless, his massive chest heaving with exertion that had produced nothing, his confidence shattered by an encounter that had lasted less than 30 seconds. He had been so certain, so absolutely convinced that his size and strength would matter, that years of training had prepared him for any opponent. And in 6 seconds, all of that certainty had evaporated. "How?" The word emerged as barely more than a whisper. "How did you do that?" Bruce's expression softened slightly, the steel giving way to something closer to compassion. You attacked with your body, with your muscles, with everything that you have spent years developing. But you did not attack with your mind. You did not see what was actually happening. You saw what you expected to happen, and you fought against that expectation rather than against me. I do not understand. You expected that your size would intimidate me. It did not. You expected that your speed would surprise me. It did not. You expected that your power would overwhelm me. It did not. Every attack you threw was based on assumptions about how I would react, and every assumption was wrong. Bruce paused, letting the words settle. You are not a bad martial artist, Bolo. You have genuine skill, but skill without awareness is like a weapon without a wielder. It can be used against you as easily as for you. The crew remained frozen in their positions, witnesses to a conversation that was clearly not meant for their ears, but which they could not have ignored if their lives depended on it. Robert Klaus had sunk back into his director's chair, his expression suggesting that he was rapidly recalculating everything he thought he knew about the man he had been directing for weeks. Bolo's shoulders slowly dropped, the aggressive tension draining from his massive frame. For the first time since the confrontation began, he looked not like a challenger but like a student, someone who had been forcibly awakened to the limits of his own understanding. I have been a fool, he said quietly. You have been proud. Pride is not foolishness unless it prevents learning. Bruce took a step closer, and now his voice carried warmth that had not been present during the demonstration. You came to this production believing that your physical development made you exceptional. And it does. You have built something remarkable. But physical development is only one dimension of martial arts. There are others that you have not yet explored. Will you teach me? The question surprised everyone, perhaps even Bolo himself. It was not what anyone expected from a man who had moments ago been demanding creative control, who had publicly challenged the film star, who had been humiliated in front of the entire crew. Bruce studied him for a long moment, assessing something that went beyond physical capability. I will teach you what I can during the remainder of this production. But the real teaching will happen in our scenes together. Every time we perform the choreography, I want you to pay attention not to the movements but to the spaces between movements. Not to the techniques but to the awareness that makes techniques possible. That is where the real martial art exists. Bolo nodded slowly, his expression carrying a humility that had not been there before. I understand. Or at least I am beginning to understand. That is all any of us can do. Begin to understand. Continue to understand. Never believe that understanding is complete. Bruce turned to address the watching crew, his voice carrying easily in the silent soundstage. We have a film to make. The demonstration is over. Let us return to work. The spell broke. People began moving again, returning to their positions, resuming the tasks that had been interrupted by the confrontation. But something had changed in the atmosphere, a shift in the collective understanding of what they were participating in. This was not just a film production. It was an opportunity to witness something extraordinary, to be present at moments that would become legend. The filming that followed was transformed. Bolo performed his scenes with a focus and precision that exceeded anything he had shown before. His movements carried new intention, new awareness. He was no longer simply executing choreography. He was exploring the spaces between movements, paying attention to things he had never noticed before. And in his scenes with Bruce, a genuine chemistry emerged that the cameras captured beautifully. The fictional rivalry between their characters gained depth because it was grounded in real respect, real recognition of each other's capabilities. When Bolo's character fell to Bruce's in their climactic confrontation, there was something authentic in the defeat, a sense that it mattered because both men had given everything they had. Years later, Bolo Yeung would become one of cinema's most iconic villains, his imposing presence and genuine martial arts skills making him irreplaceable in dozens of films. He would work with virtually every major action star of his generation, building a career that spanned decades and continents. But he would always speak of Enter the Dragon as the production that changed him, and of Bruce Lee as the man who taught him what martial arts could truly become. He could have humiliated me, Bolo would say in interviews. I challenged him publicly, questioned his abilities, demanded that the film be changed to satisfy my ego. He had every right to destroy me, to make sure I never worked in the industry again. Instead, he taught me. He saw past my pride to something that was worth developing, and he took the time to show me what I was missing. He would pause, his eyes growing distant with memory. In 6 seconds, with his fingers barely touching my throat, he showed me that everything I thought I knew about fighting was incomplete. But it was what came after that mattered. The conversations between takes. The adjustments to choreography that forced me to think differently. The patience he showed with a student who had started as an adversary. The story of that confrontation spread through martial arts and film communities, growing with each retelling until it achieved mythological status. Some versions had Bruce actually striking beyond the lookout, knocking him unconscious with a single blow. Others described elaborate demonstrations involving multiple attackers. The truth was simpler and, in many ways, more impressive. A gentle touch that communicated absolute superiority, followed by genuine teaching that transformed a rival into a disciple. Today, in the collections of martial arts historians, there exist photographs from the production of Enter the Dragon that hint at the relationship between Bruce Lee and Bolo Yeung. In one image, they stand together between takes, Bruce's hand on Bolo's shoulder, both men smiling with the easy camaraderie of people who have moved beyond conflict to connection. The photograph carries no special authentication. It is simply a moment preserved by chance. But for those who know the story, it represents something profound. The transformation that becomes possible when pride gives way to learning, when challenge gives way to respect, when the desire to defeat is replaced by the desire to understand. 6 seconds of silence. Career of gratitude. If you enjoyed this story, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment telling us about a time when someone you challenged ended up teaching you something invaluable. Those moments of humbling transformation are often the beginning of our greatest growth. Share your stories. We read every comment. And together we keep the legacy of the little dragon alive. Be water, my friend. The words echo through decades. Be water. And somewhere, Bolo Yeung still remembers the moment when he demanded that Bruce Lee lose on camera. And Bruce Lee responded by showing him what winning really meant. The dragon sleeps, but it does not die. It lives on in everyone who learned that true victory is not about defeating others, but about helping them become more than they were. That is the legacy. That is the unbreakable spirit of the little dragon.